Oh.
Yeah, when they came together, they really came together. Things were squirting straight up.
I thought that in those days, maybe they allowed you to throw your swords.
No, but they did allow us to go into a dead run on a charge. And amazing things could have happened. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Moonwulf Starkaaderson. While this could very well just degenerate into the poke the old orangutan through the bars and try to avoid the flunk poop session, and if that's what you want, that's fine. I will try to, in the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so of this hour, go over what was actually in the, the course syllabus, and then it's kind of up to you. I started fighting late in 1972. And I last fought actively Wednesday. So I have a long career in society. I'm about the closest thing to a walking, talking, excreting time capsule you're going to find. So the last half hour, 20 minutes of this is ask the old guy what you want about the old days, about getting old as a fighter, whatever. Let's see here. When I first got into the SCA, the reigning fashion for fighters.
Attention, Blair Burns.
Was, by and large, make your own.
Blair Burns.
Make it in your kitchen or your backyard.
O'Donnell.
And it had to pass just a few basic things. Let's see here. Come on, this was supposed to give me a prompt. Let's get back where I can get to this. Yeah, that's a fine one, that one. That's what I want. This is me in my second suit of armor ever. Yeah. Technical support. The old guy needs technical support. I don't do like this.
You may have to get out of your slideshow.
Yeah.
Get back to your original.
There should be a pause button in the slideshow.
Yeah.
We have to be there to pause it.
Yeah, just double click the picture.
And I just did this one. Here we go. Come on. There we go. Yeah. Once upon a time, I don't know how well you can see it. That is a Freon tank. That is a helmet I built in the theater shop at Purdue University Theaters, because at the time I was an undergraduate technical advisor for a huge production of Cyrano de Bergerac. I wasn't in the SCA, but I'd been fencing and screwing around with stuff. And it was a Freon tank. It was a Freon tank that was better than most of the Freon tank helmets out there. Because it had galvanized strap iron running along either side and down the nasal, and a couple of bars here and here. My glasses that I had to wear at the time were athletic glasses, but they still stuck out of the eye slots a little bit.
If you had one.
It was padded with closed and open cell foam, and was used almost continuously for 20 years until it was finally outlawed as even a scout helmet. It is, I am told, still residing somewhere in the archives of Midrealm's Traveling Museum. It has been nicknamed Methuselah. But if you had to, you could probably still take a hit at it. But by and large, these things, they would take the abuse with a certain amount of cosmetic damage, but they were ugly as sin. The man I'm fighting across here is Polydor Haraldson, Sir Polydor Haraldson. One of the first two people in the Middle Kingdom to really start getting into armor. He was the first guy I ever saw in a Spectre helmet. Okay, he was the first guy I ever saw who was not in a helmet made from a Freon tank. A few other details. That round shield is rimmed with a bicycle tire. That was sort of the industry standard at the time. It kind of set a limit on the shield size, and it was mostly really heavy. But we went through a lot of shields and a lot of swords. For fighters in the crowd, you may take some significance out of the fact that it was not unusual for us to break several swords in a turn. Sometimes that many shields. The record that I know of in the Middle Kingdom is held by Sir Cyprian of the Wheel, now the late great, sadly, Sir Cyprian, who broke 6 swords in one turn.
So the quality.
2 of them were his. The other 4 he borrowed, and it got really hard to start borrowing by about the 5th or 6th one. No. And I think, however, this is due to the fact not so much that we didn't know how to make swords, so much that our techniques have gotten much more sophisticated. As we have gotten, whether new fighters know it or not, you are now being taught to focus blows much more, so that the energy runs down the sword and into the target, rather than kind of resonating and wrecking up and down the sword. So now it's not that usual to see a broken sword in one of our tournaments. Then it happened all the time. The armor I've got on is my second set of armor. The first set of armor I ever wore in an SCA tournament, I wore at that tournament and then immediately turned into a pell and swore I would never wear it again. It consisted of a long rectangle of shag carpeting, and in the 70s, that was easy to find. Sewn between 2 layers of muslin, kind of like a sort of like a billboard, wear your own billboard sign, and a poncho. Went over the top, got belted around the middle. Your fighting style was mostly like this. It was hot, it was heavy, it was confining, and it didn't protect me nearly as well as on my opponent. This helmet, pair of hockey gloves, and a failed attempt at leg armor made from polyvinyl chloride sewer pipe. Cut it down, heat it in the oven, spread it out, lined it with shag carpeting, clipped it on my leg. The first warm-up fight I had at that tournament, which by the way was also the first fight I really had in the SCA, shattered that leg armor. And actually put a couple of splinters into my leg, so that was done with very quickly. People put up with a lot of leg bruises in those days. This is the second set of armor. This is polyvinyl chloride too, these plates. They were artfully painted, so they actually looked okay, but they sounded like a bad set of false teeth when I walked. And it's hard to make out. I am now wearing a cuisse. Left leg, because that's the one that they're most likely to hit. Made out of some heavy canvas drive building. It just sort of strapped on. It wasn't supported here. There's a later shot where it's down around my knee. And I wore that, I think, for the better part of about 2 years. It was protective. It didn't look half bad. It was even more or less kind of sort of within keeping with persona. But it was loud, it was noisy, and it required a tremendous amount of upkeep. Let's see. Come on. No. There we go, that's the problem. Polydor, by comparison, is wearing a Spangenhelm, however crude it might look. And we'll get some better shots at his armor later. This is what Polydor very quickly evolved to, along with Albert. Albert's in the back, Polydor is there. A set of Wisby plate armor. There's a lot of chainmail, a lot of plate and strap leather. Albert was the man for innovation in this kingdom. both in armor and in fighting. He is now still active. I think he fought in the most recent Crown tournament outside of Colorado Springs at the grand old age of, I think, 67. So he is still one crazy old man, and one still pretty damn deadly old man. Had my first fighting lesson ever in the SCA from him. He was at that point just an up-and-coming, pretty good guy. A few months later, he got knighted. A couple years later, he was king. Polydor was a tremendous technician that could reproduce and teach the things that Albert had come up with. So those were two very, very pivotal figures in both fighting and armoring for this kingdom. Polydor later sort of apprenticed people like Valerius Pencalvus, now Count Sir, and Will Wiltshire, who are now legendary figures for a whole generation across North America of SCA armorers. But maybe we should get back to the actual program. But we started out with 3M tanks, hockey gloves, things you made in your basement or your garage, and we got better. I mean, yeah, it's hard to convey how much harder it was just even to get information. This was pre-internet. This was, in a lot of cases, even pre-development. There wasn't a lot of, shall I say, practical reconstruction of stuff like this outside of maybe museums or the Tower of London. A lot of later groups could build or step in whole cloth to a lot of the research that the SCA did. So anytime you start hearing, other reenactment groups sort of inferring that the SCA is the Jerry Lewis of reenactment societies, yeah, we are in some right ways, but we did a lot of the groundwork that they got to benefit from. So you can be a little smug about that. Carpet armor was the norm for most starting fighters. We went from that, we went to plate, we went to good chainmail that wasn't made from coat hanger wire.
It sounds like it would hurt.
It was hurt, it was heavy, it came apart at every full stop. It was, the weapons, they had just, maybe 3 years before, stumbled on rattan as a viable material for weapons. Getting a hold of it.
What was used before here?
Now we're talking Kingdom of the West before the SCA even really took off. They tried all sorts of stuff. They tried strap aluminum, which was fine until you hit it on the flat of the blade, and then you had to stop the fight and straighten it out. They tried plastic rod. They tried all sorts of things. Within about the first year of the SCA, though, somebody decided, hey, this stuff works pretty well. And with California being on the Pacific Rim, that sort of thing was available more than in the Midwest. For a long time, it was like trying to make a drug connection, score some rattan. Oh, there's a better shot of that one. Now you can see, Now that white stuff sticking out on my left shoulder that's my gambazon, which was made from mattress pad. Movers pads, if you could get them, were great, but mattress pads often wound up being that. No gorget. Elbow protection consisted at that point of knee pads for basketball worn on your elbows and one cuisse, no knee protection, nothing else. And every time the marshalate introduced a new requirement on armor, there was a lot of griping of, what? That's the biggest piece of sissy stuff I've ever seen. Let's try it this way, this may work better. This is probably from late 1970s. And what's remarkable is how much progress has been made. We've got one Freon tank helmet there. We have actually a very nice sugar loaf there. That's now Duke Sir Merrill de Sebastian, Primaris. He moved down there after becoming king here. If anyone ever needs any sort of encouragement over the fact that you're a fighter and you haven't won any tournaments, at this point in time, Merrill had won 2 tournaments that I know of in his life. One of them was the Middle Kingdom Crown Tournament, the other one was the 10th anniversary of the SCA tournament. So if you're going to pick your tournaments, those are pretty good ones. This is Sir Devin Keschern. That is what my next incarnation of armor was. I decided I wanted something that didn't sound like a bat set of false teeth when I walked around. So it's simply a leather jack with leather plates riveted to the inside over a better gambazon, actually very much like the one I've been wearing ever since. Oh look, he's wearing cuisses now. He's even possibly wearing shin protection, greaves. That's because I saw somebody take a hit below their knee and we thought I'd broken his leg. Luckily, it was a very bad bone bruise. I felt bad about it, but I also took away the lesson that perhaps I was not as vulnerable as I might be. And I have a nice Spengenhelm. Ooh. The gentleman that made that, yeah, there we go. There's the helmet, the new helmet with the old armor. My old helmet has somehow migrated and been loaned to a new guy. That's a bridge fight. That's a bridge fight on a 3-foot wide bridge.
Wow.
That is, I think, now Count Sir Nathan von der Ritz, carrying Polydor's big shield, because he didn't have one of his own. That's me kneeling down. Count Sir Berengar Hinraude, who sadly passed away a few years ago. I have no idea who that is. That might well be Thorbjorn Greysides. Again, this was probably mid-1970s. But you can see the evolution of things. There's a few Freon tanks floating around, but a lot more of the scratch-built stuff. This is a really fine shot of Polydor Harrison. An armor that he made. This, oh, here we go. We're back to the old dad stuff. Notice that left cuisse that I would only wear? Well, that left cuisse never did stay put very well. Also, notice the petite shield I've got. And lots of Freon tanks. This is about 1973 or thereabouts late. Had a demo in North Webster, Indiana. It is important to me, and I remember it not only because I have photos from it, but it was the first time I met Duke Sir Doggin, who was not a Duke or a Sir at the time. Got to know Andrew Seldom Rest better. And God help me, met getting nauseated. Gentleman on the left is Sean McLear. He made that helmet. It was the first helmet he ever made. He made it before he joined the society. He said he thought it would be cool to make a helmet. The second helmet he ever made was one he made and gave to me for my birthday. I wore it for the better part of 12 years, I think, before it was replaced by one that was not necessarily better, but was better looking. He said he made it with, he pounded it out on a stump with a ball-peen hammer and a set of tin snips and a 3/8" electric drill. Those were his tools. And it was a helmet, those helmets would hold up today, they would pass muster. That's the one he made for me. Similar to the one I have now, but not exactly. This would have been after my first reign. I've got my Earl's fighting coronet on, as tacky as that might be. Tactics were just, yeah, it was pretty much, ah! It's from an early demonstration at Purdue. This is one of the Penzig Wars. I have a feeling it is probably about the second Penzig. The man in the foreground, I believe, is Sir Torvald Grimmy, first Baron of Northwoods. Man in the middle, I'm almost certain, is Merowald of Savestan, curiously enough, still in his original Freon tank. And the guy in the distance, although he's got one of Polydor's shields. Polydor's shield's got all around a lot, I noticed. But I don't believe that's Polydor. I think that's probably the Tom von der Ritz. This is probably from about Penzig War 2. I don't believe it's 3, but I believe it's 2. Note that it's pretty much hockey gloves, Freon tanks, and not much else. But a lot of blue jeans. This room was from a period of time, if you wanted to be a fop, you dyed some waffle weave underwear for tights and wore them with combat boots. Thanks to Albert, who I'm pretty sure is the gentleman I'm fighting there, I learned a lot and started having to innovate a lot to counter his innovation in fighting. That whole inverted guard thing came out of some of the old fighting books. Because you fought Albert with good technique, or you didn't fight Albert very long. There are happily people like that today that we can all learn from. I have no identification for this one. I pulled this one off the internet just because it was so delightfully retro. But I noticed they're not Freon tank helmets. They are, I'm not sure what they are, but they're not Freon tanks. This one is probably from Penzig War 7. I say that only because if I move this whole thing over, you'd see me standing there in the armor of the period, and if I'm standing there in that position in front of an army exhorting them, I was war king. You'll notice pole arms are finally starting to kind of show up. In fact, let's see. I had one much like that at my first SCA event ever in Ribbonstar. We had a bridge fight. It was a 6-foot tall pole arm with that kind of head on it. It was heavy and about as hard as a pillow, but it was heavy. And we stumbled on this brilliant maneuver where we would have somebody kneel in front of me, and this bridge was only that high. So anyone coming up, just uncork them. And just sheer mass and inertia would usually topple them off. And we did away with like 5 or 6 guys like that. Merowald, the Savestan, Mr. Agile comes out. Walks out, avoids the first one, surges in, kills the guy on the knees in front of me, surges back, and then looks at me, and I uncorked a big swing on him, and stepped back out of the way and watched me go flying off the bridge.
Little John on the log.
Yeah, physics is not my friend. Again, you're seeing some helms that are still Freon. You're seeing a lot more of the other stuff. This is from the 40th anniversary Penzig War opening bout, champions fight. I can't tell you how proud I was to have a part in that. I'm fighting Manfred von Holstein. Actually one of my best friends in the East Kingdom. I agreed to fight as part of that champions bout, provided I got to fight him, and I found out later independently he'd made the same statement about me. We'd never fought each other before. Wow. In all of our careers in the SCA, we had never knowingly fought each other. In fact, after we became friends, we made it a point that we would never draw a sword on the other on the battlefield. Which meant a lot of the people standing beside us got killed. But not us.
I was there that day, and you said some pretty powerful words before the fight.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what they were. Actually, I think it's probably on YouTube somewhere. But it was something to the effect that I had never been proud of, to stand as a representative of the SCA. And if I had to do it that way at the war, I wanted to be fighting somebody like that. And we had a little huddle beforehand, and the essence of it was, we don't give a rat's ass who wins this. We just want to give everybody a fight that they can be proud of and talk about for the next week. So that was absolutely the cleanest fight I could manage, while still trying to not shame myself. But that boiled down the SCA for me. That boiled down 40 years of SCA. That's what it was supposed to be. I want to kill my friend, I do not want to hurt him. I'd rather get hurt myself than bring dishonor upon myself, or the man I fight, or my kingdom. When actually, in the back of my mind, mostly there was one small sissy part of my heart just desperately saying, oh God, just don't let me screw this up. It was pretty fun.
I've seen the fight, and Your Grace, all due respect, you did not screw that fight up.
Okay. We had fun with that fight. We were two old friends that were trying to kill each other. That was pretty much the gist of it. This was at Illiton, probably when I was Prince, perhaps the second time around. Florentine was curious. When I first joined the SCA, two-sword consisted usually of one short sword with maybe a thrusting tip that was used like a shield, and the other sword was just straight up broadsword, and that was your striking sword. It was basically, you had one short skinny shield and a sword. Duke Sir Paul of Bellatrix pioneered a lot of the more sophisticated styles out west, but I didn't get a chance to benefit from that. We had to sort of independently develop it here. And other people, I'm happy to say, have taken it farther than I ever thought. Albert von Dragenveld in the King's Tavern, fighting now the sadly late, much lamented Duchess Tsarina Death. To the best of my knowledge, she was the first Middle Kingdom queen to take the field in army at wars and raids. Not to say she was a great fighter, but she had a great heart. This, I think, is the first or second Pennsic War. I take that back. This would have been the first Pennsic War. That is one, I believe, of a couple of photos that were outtakes from a Time magazine article on the war. It actually is what alerted me to the fact that the SCA existed someplace else other than California. I first heard about the SCA when I when I read a novel by Poul Anderson, also known as Sir Bela of Westmarch, called The Broken Sword. And in the introduction, he mentioned the SCA. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, they're in California. I wish they were here. Found out from the Time article, okay, we can join. Hooray. Here we go. And however, it was still the better part of a year before I actually got to see anybody in the SCA face to face, after I had joined. I sent in my box tops and all that, and still it was like, this was before the internet. This was before Facebook. This was like trying to find the gates to Elfland. If you didn't know the spells, you couldn't get them to open, and you didn't know who to ask to get the spells. As luck would blindly have it, I found out at one point I was sitting next to a girl who had briefly been part of the province of Tregartson. She put me in touch with the then Kingdom Seneschal, Richard Tatar. And from there, I got information. The first event we ever attended, I and 2 or 3 other people, was one of Vermwald's very early events. And I got to meet Paladin and Albert and Duxery and Andrew Duxery. At the time, Prince Duxery. This one pretty well is a good illustration for how things come and go in melees. For a long time, we started out, it's been fascinating watching the SCA evolve pretty much along historical lines. Because when I first joined the SCA, we were only about a quarter step up from the man-apes screeching and flinging poop at each other. And going at it one-on-one in couples, and if you won your fight, you got to go do a 2-on-1 with somebody, maybe. And if you didn't, well, you might be the 2-on-1, but it very quickly would resolve itself. And in some cases, if you won your 1-on-1, you'd stand around and wait for the other guys to get done, you know. From there, we kind of paralleled history. You started seeing very crude shield walls, you started seeing boars' snouts, you started seeing charges. And then one more Callantir showed up with the Roman army. And doors the size of Rhode Island. And that became the next step in this escalating offense-defense contest. For a couple of years, you had to have somebody with big shields. You had to have some heavy infantry that you could form a solid, impenetrable wall. We started learning how to get around that with spear work, barbs. There have been some great things that have risen and been banned at the Penzig War over the years. We came up with barbs on our spears, little tiny hooks that you could use to hook the top of one of those. Let's go! And if you were lucky, you had a drawbridge going down with a guy behind it and a big hole in the line. We had one guy that showed up one year with a glass-style big suction cup on the end of his spear. He used it like a harpoon. If you had a smooth breastplate, you were a target.
They did. That was done on the fencing field at Penzig a few years ago,
Yeah.
and that was.
Yeah.
Oh, it really wasn't funny.
Decreased Mather, in a brilliant move, had big door shield, and we actually built several like this, and he put a 6-inch rim of sole leather at the top of it, which meant anybody that tried to hook it, it wouldn't work. Those were outlawed almost immediately.
The hooks or the shield?
The shields. The hooks are still in use. But over the years, we started out with poop flinging apes. We are now kind of sort of in the pike and musket era on our best day. Occasionally we still kind of unconsciously revert to the poop and the apes thing, but still, you'll see checkerboard patterns, you'll see actual formations. One of the things that did work spectacularly well, and I've never quite understood why we didn't revisit it, Kenna's War, the war where Kenna was queen. Jafar had sadly passed away just before that. We had numbers. We had a little bit of numerical superiority, but it still did not explain how well this tactic worked on the battlefield. We had, I believe, one of the Trimarans was running that battle. And at the briefing, he outlined something that I thought at the time, you're out of your mind. But we'll give it our best shot. The Constellation Army, which is all I can speak for, followed the orders, and at the time we had a pretty disciplined bunch of guys who would actually do this. They lined up rank and file, 9 people wide, 8 deep. Just a little bit of space between every person. And the tactic was simple as mud, which was you key off your leaders in the front line, you maintain rank, you maintain file. We may hit it at a slow trot, but your speed is a fast walk once contact is made, and you do not stop under any circumstances. And it happened that way. The first line dissolved. Sir Ivar was the Constellation General, and he went down immediately along with a lot of other guys, but so did everybody in the front line, in their front line, and it blew a huge hole in their formation. The second line took some of that. The second line killed a lot of people. Half of them died. The third line killed a lot of people. I was in the third line. I came out the backside of that formation alive. still as part of a line. We'd lost a few guys. The guys in the fourth line, as people are going through, they're not stopping. So the lines in the other group, the people are turning around to try and engage, and they're getting hit by the line behind them. And it depended entirely on individual and group discipline. But it worked spectacularly well. We erased an Eastern division. And then turned around. They did an about face, back line became the front line, and they did it to another. At that point, we got enough attrition that we were probably done playing that maneuver. But I kept thinking, you know, it's so stupid, it works well. It's simple. Von Clausewitz, the famous German general and tactician, once said that no battle survives contact with the enemy. I would submit that most of our battle tactics do not survive our guys putting their helmets on. Let's face it, if Brigadoon, we're not even weekend soldiers. If Brigadoon had a National Guard, we'd be it. So anything simple is by definition good. I would love to see that tactic come back. I would actually love to see, it's hard to do meaningful tactical drills for something on the scope and the size of the war. Because if you've got a couple of guys together, you don't really even have a line. If you've got 20 guys together, you're still nothing on that order. What are you going to do? Have 10 guys against 10 guys? Well, that particular maneuver, for example, doesn't work well. But trying to get people to trust each other and say, okay, I'm going to go down, I'm taking one for this army right now. I'm in the front line, my job is to keep moving forward no matter what. Third line was a vacation. It was great. That was the perfect place to be for that particular tactic in that fight. I swung an axe 6 times and killed 5 people. And most of them were cheap shots, they never saw it coming. The guys 2 rows back from me said that they couldn't find anybody to kill. And it wasn't because I was killing a lot of people. The people in my line were killing a lot of people who were disorganized and disoriented. The guys left standing by the time we got to them looked like they had an artillery round go off next to them. They were just, what the heck? They were disoriented, they were fragmented, it was great. All right. At this point, let's see what else I have missed in my breaking my promises. We have gained over the years, what we've gained, more sophisticated armor, more sophisticated tactics by and large, and organization. God knows, we are more organized by orders of magnitude over what we were back then. My tactics as War King were revolutionary and shocking and completely effective. I told Torvald and Grimmy to take the Northwoods guys, wait until the rest of the army had engaged them, and then run around their right flank and take them from behind. And he did. And the whole place fell apart. That is what passed for brilliant tactics. About 1976 or so. What?
We call that Plan A.
Yeah. But it's still a pretty good plan. It's just the other side so rarely cooperates anymore. As I said, it has parallel history. Each side, or offense and defense, we'll put it that way, have kept kicking things up a notch to counter. So it's always been rising. Individually, our fighting techniques now are just amazing compared to what they were when I first started out. But, lest any new fighter here get cocky about that, if we put you in the Wayback Machine and dropped you in 1973, not knowing what you know now, you'd still be the newbie. Because you, whether you know it or not, are standing on the shoulders of 20 generations of SCA fighters before you. Things will go around. There will be styles that come and go. Two-sword faded out. It came back, it faded out, it came back. Big shields came and faded out. Pole arms came and faded back, it came back. Bastard swords. Anything you can name. Right now, our current big kick is 6-foot spears. That's like the sexy weapon, you know? That may very well fade out. and then probably come back. And I mentioned this once to Duke Surliaku, and I said it's like a merry-go-round. And bless his heart, he corrected me because I was wrong. He said, no, at its best, it's more like an upward spiral. Every time it comes around, the skill level's a little higher. What we've lost over the years. It's hard for me to say because I've said for many years that the longer you stay in the SCA, especially if you get to higher and higher rank, the more you see the sausage factory behind the hot dog. And I have managed to have fun in the SCA for all these years by hanging out with new people. And every time a new person comes in, I can see all this grand thing again through their eyes. The less you know about power structures, the more fun you're going to have. It just is that way. Also, although I see us kind of getting back, and I really hope it continues, we lose something by going on a war footing 24/7, 12 months out of the year. I hear this occasionally from Easterners who say, well, it's kind of a grind. Because, trust me, it didn't start out that way. And this is not meant to sound unhumble. I blame myself, at least in part, for that. At the 7th Penzig War, up until that point, you can look at the war points, the scores, and it's like 1 or 2 points more than the other side, 1 or 2 points more than the other side, tie. That war, there were 5 available war points, and the score was Middle Kingdom 5, East 0. And I was as ruthless as I could be on the field to try to make sure that we crushed them. And within about 2 years after that, you saw the Eastern war machine really starting to crank up. Because they really went away from that one feeling bad. And it should not have happened that way. I was young, I was proud, I was full of testosterone and things like that. And I did a good job as working. We won that war. But sometimes I wish we hadn't won it quite as hard. Because it's fun to be part of a tournament. It's fun to be part of a bigger ideal. We are not the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about the practical stuff in the Middle Ages. We learn a lot about the experiential stuff in the Middle Ages. My underwear is not period, but by God, I know what it feels to stand like and lead a 1,000-man charge that shakes the ground. And people can still do that, but we're built on some ideals. I grew up watching 1950s Westerns. Those were my ideals. Those were the good guys. Those were the guys that were faster. They were stronger. They were better shots. They were better fist fighters than anybody else. But they would take on the guys that would take on the people who couldn't fight back. And I realized later, after getting into the SCA, oh yeah, I need to be a knight. Because that's what that's supposed to be. So this is a wonderful, it's full of wonder, it's full of awesomeness. Occasionally it gets petty. But trust me, I could have found something better to do with my time over the last 4 decades if there wasn't more awesomeness here than not. Okay, questions? We got about 10 minutes. And we don't have to necessarily stick with fighting or things like that.
So
This is your chance to talk to the time capsule.
Okay, well, so I started fighting in '82, not as part of the SCA, but at 12 years old as part of a fantasy group that lasted till '89. And those of us that became more serious, about half of us out of the group of 30, joined the SCA. And it was a transition for us. Okay. I have friends that spent maybe not as long as I did, but 10 years after that in the SCA, prior, after the Sarah Grimdormith, the fantasy group we were in. And many of them will say there was something wholly magic about that earlier time period that the SCA never captured for them. And it may have been that it was all fresh and new, there was a little bit more of a fantasy. Well, my question is, you know, the early SCA looks a lot like what we were doing. You know, we experimented with wiffle ball bats, kendo sticks, hockey helmets. So my question is there some element of magic that's hard to, maybe it's hard
There is
to-
some element of magic. It also has something to do with the fact that I was 20 at that point. You know? And most of the SCA, the average age of the SCA at that point was probably about 21 to 23.
So it may have just been the dynamic of a
Yeah.
younger
And
crowd.
we were all
everything was
hopeless
fresh and
romantics.
new.
They were all hopeless romantics. It was the 70s.
Which in itself was
And this was new. This was something to get in on the ground floor of. Please do not ever accord me or any other old guy with a coronet on his head too much adulation or deference. We just started early and we stuck it. There are brand new guys in the SCA, brand new fighters, and I look at them and I go, oh man, that's me 42 years ago. I mentioned I can still occasionally spot him, but I'll use Sir Cecil as an example. One of our relatively new knights. Great guy, fun guy, just doing a tremendous job with training a lot of new people out of Bloomington, Indiana. But he started out as his sophomore year at Purdue with the SCA, and he wanted to learn, and he was enthusiastic. And he wanted to learn how to fight bastard sword. So he asked me to give him a bastard sword lesson. So we gave him one, and I gave him one, and then I said, okay, can we actually try using this stuff, please, please, please? Okay, fine. He zigged when he should have zagged, and caught a full force bastard sword shot, two-handed, about 4 inches above the keons, right across the bridge of his nose. And he's not a big guy. He went down like he was poleaxed. And I went, oh Christ, I've broken his neck. And I looked down and he had an open face helmet. He's got this big grin on his face. I said, you okay? He said, this is the greatest day of my life. I remember thinking at the time, oh God, that reminds me of what it was like. That is the original incarnation of the Midrealm Rangers. That might be worth some comment. Because there weren't a lot of us, for all of the stories that came out after that. But what is kind of interesting is that out of that group, there's a master. There's one member of the chivalry in that group. Now, people know them as Sir Alan Culross, Duke Sir Corin du Soleil, Sir Varian, Sir Guillaume, Sir Emmerich, Sir Cavern, Baron Thomas, Count Sir Valerius, and Master Newt Newton. And those were all flat-out young guys that just had so much in the way of energy and enthusiasm that they didn't balk when some older guy asked them, hey, you want to join a unit that probably won't live through anything? Because we were told to do things like, this is the Woods fight, go stop the Eastern Army on that trail. Yes, sir. So what's the plan, boss? We're all going to die. Plan A, all right. Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, we tripled in size the next war. I learned my lesson on that one. Any other questions?
What's the most challenging part about doing it for that long?
Not losing heart. Somebody asked me a couple of years ago whether getting older, I turned 62 a couple of weeks ago, whether getting older was a hardship. And I said, well, physically, yes, but the upside is that fighting is a challenge. It's a real, you know, oh, no. If I go up against a knight now and I beat him, I feel like I'm 22. I just beat a knight. Yeah. Because I can recognize the fact, and this is not just my opinion, this is medical stuff, this is medical statistics. I'm about half as fast as I was when I was 20. I'm flattered when younger guys will go, oh, geez, I don't want to see you when you're twice as fast. No, I'm not fast now. I just know a shorter distance between point A and point B than you do. So experience can make up for it a little bit, but it's tough. I not so jokingly say that I lost all of my superpowers when I got old. I cannot rely on being twice as fast as anybody I fight to win that fight. I've got to outfight them. I can't go from point A to point B anymore without covering any of the points in between. And I used to do that routinely. Well, that one that's an embarrassing caption on the thing. Because that was a day when that may have been the event I showed up at as Prince or King. They were having a 4-man melee tournament, but they had a shortage of fighters, so I entered as one team. And won. And it wasn't that I was that good. I was pretty good. But that was still an era where they were still feeling out. These were guys that had no idea how to fight
Classes are completed. If you want to practice with the unbuilt team, they will be out on the fighting field currently from 5 until 5:45. Again, unbuilt practice.
The kids run along and have
From
fun.
5 until 5:45.
What shouldn't you do?
Yeah.
That's a long list.
No, it actually gets pretty short. Stop learning. Stop learning. I've done this for 40 years, and I'm still in awe of how much I have to learn, just about fighting, let alone metalworking, or Norse culture, or how to seduce a woman, or anything. I've never had a clue about that. Anything else?
What's the most fun thing you've done?
Oh my God.
No, don't have him tell that.
No, that's the toughest question I'll ever be asked for the SCA. I've done
Maybe
so
one
many
moment
things.
you could think, well, this is the most fun I've had.
That 40th anniversary, that 40th Pennsic fight is in the top 5. Of the moments I remember over 40 years, I stood, they crowned me king at my first coronation in a huge ballroom. And I had a standing ovation from the crowd, and I never, ever, I hadn't expected it, my queen hadn't expected it. And it was just, oh my God, they like me, they really like me. At 1,000-man charge. I don't think I was in command, but I was at the front of it. Commanding the Middle Kingdom Artillery Corps, the year of the Yellow Rain. When I could line up 24 ballistas, hub to hub, and volley fire.
How long did?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was awesome. They pretty much banned ballistas out of effective use.
How long did it take for siege weaponry to become prevalent? I mean, it took a while for pole arms.
It's still coming on. It
Yeah.
is.
I mean, to become in use at all, I should
We
say.
paralleled actual medieval history, and that is nowhere more apparent than the griping you hear from the knights about archery.
Yeah.
They are cowards, they are vile, they are dirt of the earth. And regrettably, some of the archers helped that along. If I had my way, if I could change one thing that would probably change a lot of the complexion of how people feel about other arms, it would be that if you're on a heavy battlefield, you die by getting hit with something. You know, oh, I surrender. If you're gonna go out there, you're gonna get hit with something. That's how you die. And it's also why I've always told anybody that we've trained with Constellation Siege Corps, your graduation exercise is to walk out there 30 feet, turn around and take one in the chest. Because if you're gonna deal it out, you gotta know what it feels like. And if you are overrun, if you run out of ammo, if your gun goes down, you're infantry. Get your weapons, let's go. And that goes a long way toward taking a lot of the animosity out of any kind of elite. But that existed in the Middle Ages. Gunners were skilled labor and were highly resented by the infantry. Unless they were helping to kill people. Friendly fire isn't, you know that. Okay. Any questions? Oh, I don't talk.
Thank you.
I can talk all day. Thank you for attending, Master. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see any master, but especially you.
This day and age.
That's true. We've never been real thick on the ground.
So many of us can.
Somebody asked me earlier today, going to do the SCA, in a group of other knights, you know. So it's, evidently, you can wear your belt, your knight's belt any way you want. Well, you know, you have to realize, I'm not a real knight. and bless them, the other chivalry pleasant said, oh yeah, no, he is, don't let him bullshit. He really is. I said, no, I'm a master. That's kind of like a knight with options.
Maybe I missed it, but what material did you guys use for swords before?
Rattan. We were using rattan at that point.
Okay.
It's just that they were essentially, you take the chunk of rattan, you wrap it in tape, you put some sort of rudimentary guard on it, and that's your sword. If you're really a craftsman, you maybe carve down the handle a little bit.
And it was still getting broken that often, or?
Yes, very often.
Yeah.
Part of it was...
Did you get the strapping tape treatment? I think
well,
that
the
might
strapping tape helped immensely, but still, we were breaking a lot of swords, and I still maintain it's in large part due to the fact that we had no real technique on delivering the blows. He can tell you all about it.
He snapped a few pull wires today.
Yeah, one or two.
Yep. No, my theory is that we both a lot of swords because we didn't know how to throw the blows.
I know.
We weren't transmitting the force into the target, it was sort of resonating up and down the wall.
I would also contribute that rattan has gotten better for us over the years.
That too, it's got fresher.
Yes.
It has gotten fresher. I'll let you see this. That's half the show. This Merrill Sylvaeus down in the middle.
All of these were before my time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm before everybody's time. That's what's sad. In going through these photos, I found one from that demo that was part of the village of North Webster, Indiana, decided they were going to try and have like a regular Middle Ages themed weekend. And they had a big SCA demo, they had a parade, they had horses for the royalty.
Wow.
And I came across a photo from that parade that I took because I happened to be working for a newspaper at the time and going to this event. That's how I conned my editor into letting me take that day off. And all of the royalty on that, in that parade are now friends.
No, don't eat that one.
God, I feel like a redwood. Penzing War 7, I think.
What was your first Penzing War?
3. That's the 40th anniversary of Penzing being Manfred. That's Albert von Dreckenfeld fighting Duchess Serena. And just Serena, I think. That's probably about Penzing War 2. That's probably one of the first appearances in the Calendar Shield. Okay, this one I've got to explain. I promised I would. Oh, come on, guys.
There we go.
This one,
Is that you and Laura?
no, that's actually me and, oh, that was a good time to catch it. Jeez.
There you
That is actually at the Peoria Community College Renaissance Fair, Northern Illinois. I was a baron at the time. This was before I won my first crown, just. Albert was prince. Albert was prince or king, but that's Albert von Dreckenfeld.
All right.
Albert was one of the greatest artisans, both for weapons, armor, and just fun shit. He made this spiked pike maul right here. It's on a 5-foot shaft, and he made that. It's all plastic and foam rubber.
Flail.
That's probably why we outlawed it.
This was a demo fight. And it was set up, WWF had nothing on us, man.
As long as you yell ANS before they hit the
And
ground.
I was despicable. I was chasing him around. I wrapped it around his leg at one point and tripped him. I was kicking at it. I was doing all sorts of bad crap. And the finale with this was supposed to be me coming up in a big roundhouse, him getting his pole arm up and letting it wrap around and yanking it away from me and then beating me up, chasing me around and beating me up while the crowd cheered. I did the big wind-up. In fact, it may have been just before just after the shot was taken. And the problem was, somewhere around in here, the ball separated from the chain and went 50 feet straight up.
Oh.
And then came down about there. Literally in the lady's lap, or between her legs. It hit the ground, bounced about 5 feet, and went up. Richard of Allsops, who was then the King of Seneschal, walked over, picked it up off the ground, and in an inspired moment said, "My lady, if you like, I can have this autographed and returned to you." Meanwhile, the bad guy's out there with nothing on the end of this stupid plastic chain. Albert's standing there frozen, and we had somehow reversed our positions so that my shield was facing the crowd. I put the shield up in front of my face and said, "Al beat me to death." I put my hand over my face because this was a piece of pine. It was half that length and the rest of it was splinters by the time he was done. He just beat me into the ground and just kept beating me as long as the crowd cheered. And they cheered a long time.
Oh.
But it still is one of my most treasured shots. And I thought I had lost all copies of it. And in digging through a dumpster outside of Lucy Seaman's house when we were going to her estate to bring a copy of this surface. Yeah. Serena. Her executors, the wife half is the lady whose house she died in. She got hospice care there. And who I remember as a flighty 16-year-old about this period. But she said, Serena saved my life when I was 16 and I had to take care of her. Her husband, however, he makes his living, among other things, cleaning out apartments after people have been evicted and left stuff behind. So if it's not something he recognizes as intrinsically valuable, it goes in the dumpster. And he threw away a lot of stuff in that dumpster that he then had to go through with a fine-tooth comb, and his wife found out about it. After we pulled out her mother's death certificate.
That's kind of important.
It's like way important for estate resolution stuff, yeah. Yeah, Serena's mother This is just by way of curiosity. Celebrated, 2 years ago, celebrated her 100th birthday. Serena did not survive her by a year, which is very sad. But that was another high point. That was spoken of for many years, and as you said, it's one of the several reasons we don't allow shit like that. I am proud to say that I have had several regulations and laws passed because of my existence.
Been there, done that.
For a while, the fencing rules had something in it about you cannot appear to be out of control. That was a result of me, I think, doing a dive and a forward roll and coming up underneath Alexander Seton with my dagger in his stomach.
That actually might explain that marshal a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
who evicted Sir Ish from the bridge battle for dropping his sword. That called him dead.
Yeah, come on. That actually is a shot taken in Louisville at one of the old Flame Christmas trees in the old barn, which was sort of a combination theater and party room and everything else. And we would have a
There's something to
weekend-long
say.
event there. Everybody would sleep on the floor. We were all college
Was
students.
that on campus?
That was just off of campus. It was down by the river, not too far from. That's Pensick War 7, I think. That's about 1973, 4. First appearance of Midrealm Rangers. There's that guy again. Albert von Dergenvelt by Polydor Haraldson. And their twin on them. Look at that shuffle. Yeah.
Just doing what it wants.
It's been a long, long time. It's been a hell of a ride in this organization. And I've said this before, I can do martial arts other places, I can do weapon work other places, I can do metal work other places, I can do historical research, and I can dress up funny. But I can't find these people anymore. Ooh, there's a style that I won't use anymore.
That little strap.
That was called, we called that the tombstone, and it was just that, it was a strap shield, it was not armor. And I didn't use it except as a sword and shield, and it was a time when I just decided, okay, I can beat people if I use a full-size shield. Let's make it so that if I make a mistake, I die. And I got better that way. But just wild times.
Just love to see some of this old armor.
Yeah.
That was relatively recently.
Well, that's Penzic 40.
Yeah, okay.
That's the opening fight of Penzic War 40. That's about 1981 or 2. That's probably early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. They said that's one of the very early Penzic Wars, maybe 1 or 2, which I was not at. That one's probably about 20 years ago. And that would have been late 70s, early 80s. Again there. In fact, probably the same year, Albert's still king. Middle Kingdom Artillery Corps, it's like the year of the Yellow Ray. That's Albert von Dreckenvelt fighting Polydor Haraldson. Two guys that this kingdom can thank for not everybody still wearing Freon tanks. Albert was an innovator both for fighting and for armoring. Polydor was a tremendously good armorer and teacher of armoring, and a good fighter. He was always the bridesmaid, never the bride guy. He probably won almost as many second place in crown tournaments as anybody I can think of. And you notice those two sets of armor look, we call them the twins, the Panzer twins. Albert made his set, Polydor immediately made another set that was very similar to it. And then they branched out from there. But as I said before, Polydor had the first helmet on I ever saw that wasn't a Freon tank. It was a pretty crude looking Schwagen gun, but it was still purpose-built. Albert is also has the distinction of being the first person I ever killed in the SCA at an event. And it wasn't through any fault of mine. It wasn't this helmet. He had a magnificent Gothic salade that he built, jousting style helmet, with a separate bearer that clamped up underneath. He wore it for the first time in a fight at a melee that happened to be the first event I ever fought at. And I knew Albert before this. This was, we went from terms. And he put this thing on for this melee and found out that he could see out of that 3/8 of an inch slot on a tilt. He later said, I could see you from the top of your collarbone to your eyebrows. And they started a melee. They had a pickup melee of like 5 or 6 guys on the side. And melee tactics in those days was pick out somebody you would really want to fight and then fight them and kill them. And if you win, then maybe you could go help somebody else. Albert was a pretty hot stick at that point. This was soon before he got knighted. And everybody said, okay, I want to fight that guy who's not Albert. I was the new guy. I didn't know anything about this, and suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, I got to fight the guy with the really good-looking armor that just won the tournament. But he hadn't worn that helmet. And I walked up to him, swung and hit him, and he fell down. And they all moved away from me on the W bench there. He killed Albert. Albert helped. Albert's helmet helped. But man, I can remember driving 8 hours to a Penzig War, setting up a tent at 3 in the morning, getting up at 7 so you could start fighting at 9, fight all day, party most of the night, pack everything up the next morning with a killer hangover and drive home. Yep. But we were all 20-something. And that, as I said, I think that has as much to do with the magic of that time as anything. Steve Martin, the comedian, wrote a really telling autobiography called Born Standing Up. And he had a great line in it when he was talking about someone he had known at the time when he was just starting out. And he said, and I remember this person, this person, this person, they were all beautiful. But then we were 20. All of us were beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, you think I would have gotten laid more.
More competition, they were all beautiful too.
They were all beautiful, and I was just incredibly shocked.
You shot?
Sometime I'll do a workshop on shyness and not overcoming it, but hiding it. But yeah, I'm painfully shy.
You, Palomar.
What?
Palomar is extremely shy also.
Yeah. Fortunately, his ego overrides everything.
Should I cut that out? That's okay, the memory card actually ran out a while ago.
Oh, good, yeah.
I put in another one, but I
don't
just
think
not put the second
it's
part.
because, yeah, I have a huge ego, also have a huge ego, but I really am painfully shy. I can flip up the armor and go on stage now. That's how I get through this stuff. Yeah, you guys are cool, so.
Well, yeah, we're all in your lineage.
What?
Not all of us.
Most of us,
That you know of.
most of us.
I have been told that I look exactly like Ragnar, but I'm pretty sure.
You do look unsettlingly like right
Yeah, I know.
You really,
Not his, I know.
no,
I'm not
you really do. But since I know he never got a date during that period. Kirsten was like the first woman who paid any attention to
That's
me.
okay.
Fortunately for him. What?
being painfully shy right now.
Quit showing your lineage.
Yeah, your lineage is showing.
Hate it.
Yeah, we're just kind of rambling now, so let's
Hey,
go.
notice the complete armor in this
We
period.
don't use this part of the talk.
Yeah, this
Wait,
is more armor.
we
than
did this
was
already.
required.